We start with news that would shake the world of football at its very core. Spanish radio network Cadena Ser reporting that Lionel Messi is ready to leave Barcelona. He has called off negotiations over his contract. Our Moises Llorens reporting that Messi is angry at the Barcelona front office over leaked media reports. For more, Sid Lowe and Frank Leboeuf join us. Sid, is this for real? Is Lionel Messi now really going to leave Barcelona? And what is at the root of this?
Well, look, this is something that needs to be kind of explained, contextualized and unpacked. Now, is this for real in the sense that is Leo Messi unhappy? Has he put a pause to conversations over a new contract and put a stop to that for the time being? And is he absolutely furious with the way that Barcelona is being run? Yes. Is he also 34 next summer? Yes. Is that a natural point at which he would be contemplating what his next move would be? Yes. But the context is really, really important here. This isn't Lionel Messi saying, I will leave. This is Lionel Messi saying, I won't renew this deal now. I won't renew this deal with this board of directors, at least not for the moment. I want to be convinced that we're going to buy the right players, that we're going to build the squad in the right way, that the club is going to be settled. And by the way, next summer, there are presidential elections. I think what Lionel Messi is doing more than anything else is obviously keeping his own personal options open in terms of what he decides, how he feels about himself in a year's time. But I think more than anything else, he's effectively saying to Josep Maria Bartomeu, the president with whom the relationship isn't good, he's saying, I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of the photograph of my renewal. I'm not going to give you the chance to go into presidential elections unless you convince me otherwise. So being able to say to people, I'm the one that's guaranteed Lionel Messi's continuity. So I think you cannot divorce this piece of news from the context. And as I say, the context is his age, the failures at the club, and the fact that there's presidential elections next summer. Now, in a way, the ideal scenario for Messi, of course, is that he renews with a new president who he does trust in next summer. So this doesn't mean he's going. What it does mean is he's able to leverage the possibility of going to try and change things at Barcelona.
Frank, how often have we asked the question, how good would Barcelona be without Lionel Messi? Can you imagine it? Do you think they'd still be able to compete with Real Madrid? Do you think they'd still be a top team in the world as they are now?
That's a question that maybe we can answer soon if Lionel Messi goes and finds another club. It's hard. I mean, it's of course one of the most entertaining players that we ever seen, and with Ronaldo fighting for more than a decade to know who is the best entertainer and not maybe the best player, because that's another question that we have to answer. But the best entertainer for more than a decade in the world. I don't know. I don't like the political aspects of what Sid just explained, but I want to see the good thing about, Barcelona being able to turn a new page of their history without Messi. Sooner or later, it's going to happen, because maybe at some point he's going to give up, he's going to retire, and they will have to do so without him. So of course they will. It will take a time. Hopefully not like Milan AC with all the big players leaving and Milan AC not being able to come back to the best, but Barcelona will have to think about a new future without Lionel Messi. It's going to be a big curve, it's going to be a big turn, but I'm sure they're going to be able, with the young players that they have, the academy that they have, to find a new genius, and we'll see. Well, as Sid said, he's not gone yet, but I'm pretty interested about to follow that thing, because I want to see if Messi can go to another club. I want to see how the club's gonna show up next year, Barcelona. So everything is very exciting for me.
Sid, it's been just less than 24 hours since this news broke. Half the fun of tracking football in Spain is watching the reaction from the media, both in Madrid and in Barcelona. What has been the response?
Well, look, in a way, considering how big this story appears to be on the surface, because of course on the surface the headline is Lionel Messi right now doesn't intend to continue. Now that in itself is, as you rightly said at the top of the show, huge. But of course when you start to kind of pick away at this, you say, well, doesn't plan to continue right now, but we're saying beyond next season. So at the very least, we're a year away from this. Everybody in Spain is aware of that context, that this is partly about the sense of being let down right now, being let down by this board of directors who have to face elections next year, so may not be there. Everybody's aware of the fact that, look, He's 33. He'll be 34 this time next year. And maybe, who knows, that's the point at which a player like him would be calling it a day anyway. Maybe not necessarily calling it a day in his footballing career, but calling it a day in his footballing career at the very highest level. And then perhaps he looks at something like Qatar or the US, or he looks at perhaps even the romantic move of going back to Argentina. And so I think what happened was that after the initial kind of impact of hearing that headline statement, which is right now Messi's not happy and he's not going to stay at Barcelona, then people started putting the other pieces together and thinking, actually, you know what? This is not quite as big as it seems. Or at the very least, it's not as big right now as it appears, and there is plenty of time to get this back on track.
Frank, you mentioned you didn't like the politics that Sid was referring to. Give me the footballer's perspective then. You see everything that's happening at Barcelona. The Arthur Pjanic swap was clearly done over money. Is Barcelona an attractive place either to stay if you're Messi or to go if you're another talented player?
Well, it seems to be a big mess. Of course, you cannot deny the political aspect of the club, and especially how Spanish clubs work with the election and everything. But in a football perspective, you see a big club, but you see a big club with problems with recruitment. And before, they were absolutely fantastic. Every player who came to Barcelona was the right person for the right spot. It seemed different now, and the example of Griezmann was the biggest example of what you shouldn't do when you are Barcelona. So there are some question marks from players whether they have to come to Barcelona or not, because of course, can you refuse and deny an offer from Barcelona? I don't think it's possible yet, but if they carry on like that, and especially if Messi is gone, that will be another question that players will answer by the answer of no, because of course we don't know what's going to happen to that fantastic club.
Right, Sid, every problem has a solution. One of the solutions is being floated right now, at least in Spain and maybe elsewhere in Europe, is that Pep Guardiola could return to Barcelona. Do you think there's A, any chance, and B, would that satisfy Messi?
Well, look, I think it's very unlikely because, of course, again, you have to look at this in the context. And the context, and Frank's right, the politics are not always pleasant, but they're a reality. And the context is that this is a board of directors led by the president, José María Bartomeu, with whom Messi's relationship isn't great, but with whom Pep Guardiola's relationship isn't great either. And both of those men, both Guardiola and Messi, know that next summer there will be presidential elections and there will be an opposition candidate, almost certainly Victor Font. Now, those two men, on the face of it at least, would be much more likely to be aligned with Victor Font than they would be with Bartomeu. But Victor Font already has his manager lined up, and that's Xavi. So if Guardiola was to return for just 1 year, knowing that in a year's time perhaps things are differently and going to be different, and to return under a board of directors that he doesn't truly believe in, I just kind of don't see it. I don't see Guardiola putting himself in that position. And so I think this is a situation that, in terms of the kind of, if you like, a proper resolution, we don't really get that until next summer, unless somehow, by some miracle, elections can be forced this summer, which I don't think are going to happen. I think it's next year that we see this. And as I say, next year, the opposition figure with which Guardiola would be most likely to be in line with, already has his manager, and it's someone else. So I just don't see the building blocks in place for that to happen.
Frank, if you were in Guardiola's shoes, would you touch the Barcelona job?
Well, no, for the reason that Sid just explained, that there is no room for him. I don't think the president will stay. I think there will be a new election. I think somebody is going to come. And as Sid said, Xavi is already in the right spot and will be the next coach. And on top of it, if Messi stays, I think they still have the soda problem, discipline for diet between them, that they won't get along very well. I mean, Guardiola was a little bit fed up when Messi was not listening to what he said disciplinary. So I don't think they're gonna work together. So if Messi goes, what's gonna happen to the club? Do you think Guardiola wants to come to Barcelona if he's not sure he hasn't got the best players around him? I don't think so.
Sid, let's change gears a little bit. We haven't had you on since the blow-up between Quique Setien and Antoine Griezmann's family on social media. What's been the reaction to that bit of drama, which now seems like a decade ago in wake of the Messi news?
It's amazing how fast things move, isn't it? How quickly we leave one story behind and move on to the next one. Because, of course, what happens particularly in a time of crisis at a club like Barcelona with the degree of media speculation and attention that's on them, is that things do move very, very fast. And I think that's another thing which, and I didn't mention it earlier, but that's part of the context of this piece of news coming out about Messi as well. It's about that sense that things aren't right, and now's the time that you can perhaps force a change on the club. In terms of the situation with Griezmann and Barcelona, it's interesting because the reaction, obviously, with him has focused on this being far more difficult to sort out the Messi situation. Because we've seen this with Messi before, moments when we thought, might he leave? And I think we all deep down know that Messi in his heart of hearts wants to finish his career at Barcelona and will do what he can to do that. But he wants these last 2 or 3 years to be the right ones. With Griezmann, it's slightly different because he's in a position where he could move on. He's in a position where I suspect if there was really good money for it, Barcelona might try and make that happen. And of course, he's in a position where he will feel that having waited an entire year to go to Barcelona, having changed his mind the first time round, and now gone through a first season where it hasn't ended the way that he would have liked it to, then perhaps he's kind of looking around for something else. And I thought the most telling thing, by the way, of all of the comments that was made was the comment from his father when he pointed out to Setien, you don't have the keys, you are not driving this truck, you are just a passenger. And of course, if you've got a player's father essentially saying to the manager, you're powerless, that asks all sorts of questions about, okay, who really is driving this truck then?
Frank, you haven't been shy. You've said Griezmann should leave Barcelona. If Messi leaves, do you think Griezmann could find success?
Well, don't forget Messi is going to leave if he leaves within a year. So meaning another very poor year for Griezmann. I don't think he has the time for that. There is the Euro next year, then after the World Cup. So he has to play to be in the national team squad. He has to stay in his prime if he wants new good contract with the endorsements, and that's another problem. But the situation is critical with the father comment, and I think Setien will make the point. Next game, where you should see Griezmann on the bench to make sure that the guy is not only the passenger but really the driver of the truck. I think it's very sad what we see because everybody made a mistake. I always said that in the show that Griezmann is responsible, the club is responsible, the father is responsible because the father pushed his son to go to Barcelona. Griezmann made a fantastic video last year to say, well, no, I'm staying, where Messi said you could come. Then why Barcelona opened the door a year after? So it's a big mess. And I'm not sure that it can be resolved. Even if Messi leaves, it's for me too late because it's going to be in a year. So 2 years of miserable life for Griezmann without playing for Barcelona the way he wants to play.
Sid, what do you think? No chance of a post-Messi Antoine Griezmann redemption tour at Barcelona?
Well, look, I mean, Frank's quite right. The chances are that would definitely be a year away, no matter what, at least a year. And then, of course, for at least one season, you have to find a way of accommodating those two players. Now, I don't think that's impossible, but there is a very basic fact, which we've talked about from the very start, and Frank's quite right on this. From the very beginning, we said, well, look, you've got Antoine Griezmann, who is an absolutely brilliant footballer, who plays brilliantly, above all, in 2 positions. One, as a forward coming in off the right into the middle, or the other off the central forward as a second striker. So he goes to a club where possibly the only person in the world who is better than him at both of those things is already there. And so it was always going to be difficult to find a place for him. Now, I think there's a mechanical problem there. I think there's a degree of a personal problem, but I think that's possibly been overplayed in terms of this idea that we have that Messi and Suarez didn't want him in the team. I don't think that's entirely true. I think it's true that they wanted Neymar because they knew that would work. But I think they would find a place for him if they could see it happening. And so, look, if Griezmann can adapt to another role, then yes, but we've had a year kind of trying to see if that happens, trying to see if he can. Does he want another year? As Frank says, I think another year is a big ask. But then there's another problem. Imagine that Griezmann wants to go. Imagine that Barcelona want to sell him. Where to? For how much money? Who pays the wages? It's not that easy to find these exit strategies, and even less so in a depressed market, as this market is almost certainly going to be.
Complicated for
sure.
Well,
I'm sorry, Sid. If I can say, Sebastian, we already have a solution. Neymar goes back to Barcelona and Griezmann goes to Paris.
Yeah.
That's what we call an exchange, and we found the solution.
Thank you, gentlemen.
But I think that's probably even more complicated than it sounds, because of course then you've got to deal with the salaries. You've got to work out, as we saw with the Arthur Pjanic deal, how you create the prices, what you claim the prices to be. It's quite difficult to make that happen. But you're right, on the face of it, that's everybody happy, isn't it? That's the best way to round this off.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.